Welcome in, everybody. Mike Johnson, Simone Eli joining you for another week of head-to-head talking Alabama football. And what a game to recap as the Tide beat Georgia in really the most unbelievable fashion. Bryant-Denny Stadium was as pumped up as it has probably ever been for that game last Saturday. Now Bama preparing for a trip to Vanderbilt. We will take a look at last weekend and look ahead to the Commodores. That's here on Head-to-Head. Let's go. Welcome in, everybody. Mike Johnson, Simone Eli joining you for another week. Mike, I don't even know what to say other than, wow. What did we just witness on Saturday? I am still truly at a loss of words, man.
Yeah, I'll say it for you. How about this one? Roll Tide. I don't get to say that very much over here in the state of Georgia, especially here recently. But I'll tell you this, it just an incredible job by his coaching staff, all the players, being as prepared as you can and going against a team that's been one of the best teams in the country over the last few years. It was a great game to watch. I don't know about you. I found myself standing on top of the couch at certain points throughout the night, yelling, trying not to wake up the kids. But it was a great Saturday night in the Johnson household, I can tell you that.
Listen, I'm just proud that you had your kids in bed because my kid was wide awake.
Barely.
I don't know how you accomplished that. My kid was wide awake until after the game was well over. And at that point, he had all the energy in the world because I have all the energy in the world. Having covered, I don't want to just go straight to the freshmen because there's a lot of people that go into a lot of wins and we know all that. But let's just talk about Ryan Williams for a minute because I covered him for the last 3 years. He was just, won Mr. Football here in Alabama 2 times. And I cheer for him like he's my own flesh and blood. Literally, I was up, I was fist pumping, and you try to stay kind of, middle of the road when it comes to college football and cheering and all that. But listen, you're playing Georgia. I don't want to see Georgia win, right? So I might as well have been saying Roll Tide myself. And so but I'm always going to cheer for Ryan Williams. And man, what a absolute baller. And when you watch him in high school, you wonder if it's going to, translate and what's that going to look like? And boy, does it ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because all the things you've been hearing, and I'm sure you followed all of them, having covered him for the last couple of years, is one of the best recruits ever. Like, yeah, this guy is unbelievable. He's special. And I'm sitting there going, dude, I played next to Andre Smith, who was a 5-star Mr. Everything. I played next to Julio Jones. I played with Julio Jones. Trent Richardson and all these other number one recruits that came in. I played against Percy Harvin, who was a legend, coming in the recruiting world. I'm sitting there going, okay, yeah, I'm sure he's pretty good. He's still, supposed to be a senior in high school and everything else. And that's another thing. Lord knows everybody has said he's 17 years old until the wheels have fallen off that wagon. I don't think most people understand that he's not just a young freshman. Like, he's actually supposed to be a senior in high school. And so that's it's been fun to kind of explain that to the people over here in Atlanta throughout the week on my radio show. But he is special. I mean, the way he kind of controls his body in the air, some of the moves he makes. He's an electric player, and Jalen Milroe did a great job of getting the ball to him, allowing those to make those plays. Just a special night all the way around for him and kind of his coming out party in terms of the national scene.
And when you just think about this entire game and how it started, there's so many different intricacies I want to get to because Alabama could not have asked for a better start. It was one of the things that we talked about last Saturday was, the winner of this game has to come out really, really strong. But credit to Georgia for weathering that storm. And I think we saw Nick Saban's face in that moment there in the television broadcast. They're up 28-0. This ain't his first rodeo. He knows that in a flash, Georgia can be right back in this ball game, and they ended up leading the game, of course. But when you saw what Jalen Milroe was able to do in the air, but also with his legs early into that game, it was like Georgia had a brief forgot for a moment that this guy can take off with his feet. And man, those early plays were absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and it was weird the way Georgia kind of started off defending him. They kind of tightened the guys up on the edge of the line of scrimmage that were supposed to be playing contain. I think they were worried about some of the counter plays and the kick out plays. So they kind of tightened down their splits. And credit to Alabama's tight ends and lead blockers, really doing a nice job of getting the edge sealed off and allowing Jalen Milroe to get outside. And also guys like Kendrick Law, wide receivers down the field blocking their butt off. They're allowed Jalen Milroe to make those special plays. So there are a number of little details inside of this game plan that I absolutely loved. I honestly thought the running backs would have a little more success from Alabama, but nonetheless, watching Jalen Milroe kind of shoulder that load and really say, you know what, I don't care if they're having success or this guy's having success. Just give me the ball. I promise I'll make somebody miss. I'll use that speed. It was fascinating to watch because you can literally see in real time Jalen Milroe not only
Yeah.
makes strides in the passing game with his legs, starts to climb up those those draft boards and everything else kind of around
Yeah.
him. It was a coming out party for Jalen Milroe, and not that he hasn't been on the scene nationally, but this is by far the best game he's played, since he's been at Alabama in my eyes. So it was special to watch.
Yeah, Ryan was the freshman of the week in the SEC. Jalen was the offensive player, and he's also the leading guy for the Heisman after this performance. Alabama's up to number 1 in the AP poll, so pretty much check every box that you could ask for when it comes to being, 6 weeks into the season for Alabama. You couldn't be happier if you're a fan right now. I want to talk about the defensive side too, because though it was a little bit of a tale of two halves, you had to know that at some point Georgia's elite offense, because they have a lot of guys. I know there were some injuries up front, but Carson Beck can do incredible things. And we saw that down the stretch. It was not in that first half. And I wanted to give credit where it's due, because I felt as though Kane Womack had a beautiful game plan for what he wanted to do. When it comes to defending Georgia early in that game. And we really saw that play out. And you also give credit to Georgia making those halftime adjustments and going into the half with a little bit of momentum and then coming out the way that they did. Both sides just good coaching all around.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think if you just look at it and say, well, it's a tale of two halves, I think you're spot on. But I also want to highlight the fact that Georgia was able to convert so many fourth downs in this second half and at the end of the first half. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, it's fourth down. They'll get them this time. No, absolutely not. It was unbelievable.
Yes.
So it wasn't, they weren't just, climbing down the field one play after another. They were actually sustaining drives by converting fourth downs and third downs throughout most of the game. So you do want to, take your hat off to Carson Beck. And I know that neither one of these teams are in for moral victories, but if you're Georgia, you have to be happy with the way in that environment, in that situation against this Alabama team, you were able to kind of scratch and claw back. I don't know about you, and I said it last week, I think we'll see these two teams play again at some point in the near future because they're both very, very good. And I think both of them probably are national title favorites on most lists, if not on everybody's list right now towards the season.
Yeah, and I think that both fan bases would love to see these two go head to head sometime in December in Atlanta for sure. When you think about where Alabama goes from here, the Tide undefeated on the season, 4 games into it in the SEC, staying perfect, and now they take a trip to Vanderbilt, a team that has had moments of this is not the same old Vanderbilt type of program, so to speak. A lot more excitement there in Nashville. You worry. I always talk about this. You worry about the high of a big win against Georgia and then coming back down to life and saying, okay, like we need to go just check the boxes each Saturday and move forward. And where do you think that this team is mentality wise? Because I truly believe, and I don't want to be that guy. You've seen teams where you had the concern, like, hey, are they really going to be able to just move forward and get past this win? I feel as though the leaders in this locker room are very, very capable of that. They're probably already past this win.
Well, I think to your point, in a lot of ways, this is kind of the next thing on the checklist for the Kalen DeBoer, as far as Alabama fans go. It's like, okay, we know he can coach. Now he can scheme offenses. Can he beat Georgia? Okay, he can beat Georgia. Now can he keep this team consistent, right? It was the Nick Saban rat poison thing that we all grew accustomed to and that you knew this team most times was going to show up to play. And now you have this situation where it's mid-afternoon, you're at Vanderbilt. You don't expect a lot out of Vanderbilt. And I'll tell you, Simone, this ain't your dad's Vanderbilt team. You mentioned it. This is a team that could easily be 4-0. And they have athletes all over the field as well. So it's going to be quite the task, I think, for Kalen DeBoer and all these, this coaching staff to keep this team on task this week.
Yeah, just looking at this Vanderbilt team, what they've been able to do in the last couple of weeks. I mean, a double overtime game against Missouri, who was ranked in the top 10 in the country. I think they still might be. They're coming off 2 losses, the Georgia State loss in non-conference play, but they're hungry. And I think that everyone's going to kind of get up for Alabama, as they always do. That's like the big game for everybody. Nick Saban said it before, we're everyone's big game. What type of, not only hunger, but motivation does this program have to be able to say that we can be competitive with this Alabama team? And how much do you have to keep that in mind as a Tide program when you go on the road, maybe for the first time in the SEC?
Well, I think simply when you look at the heartbreak from the last couple of weeks, and by the way, this is not foreign to Diego Pavia, the quarterback for Vanderbilt. A lot of Auburn fans will remember this guy as the person that was quarterbacking New Mexico State last year that comes into Jordan-Hare and knocks them off. Never want to miss an opportunity to take a shot at the Auburn program when I get the opportunity.
They're already so down, man. Like honestly, bro, like you're putting your heel on the throat here, man, because there's hardly a pulse over
I know it, but I think that's who Diego Pavia is, and obviously they get the big win opening the year against Virginia Tech in overtime. They beat Alcorn State. They lose against Georgia State in a game that was at Turner Field, what most people know it as Turner Field. I don't even know the name of it now. It's kind of just one of those weird games. You don't know what to expect, and they end up losing in the last minute of that. And then lose, obviously, in overtime 2 weeks ago, against Missouri, in a game that was crazy, that featured 3 missed field goals in the fourth quarter. That could have put either team up. So it's been an intriguing year for Vanderbilt. It's a good program. It's a much improved program. I think they returned 15 starters from a year ago, and they add Diego at the quarterback position. So this is a team that's been around the block, and they know what to expect, and I think they've done a good job with the coaching staff up there. To be honest with you, Simone, I think they look a little bit offensively like a South Florida, although it's a little bit different. They run things out of pistol and more of wing sets, but they're going to run spread out. They're going to run the quarterback. He's their leading rusher, and they're going to do some different things and use kind of his dynamic athleticism.
So Alabama will be at Vanderbilt. They'll return home for South Carolina, and then of course the third Saturday in October against Tennessee. You want to stay healthy. I think that's one of the biggest things. I want to ask what it is that you're looking for from this program over the next couple of weeks. Not to discredit what Vanderbilt and South Carolina can do on the field and how significant those games are. You want to check the box in league play, but then you think about that game in Knoxville, and I think getting out of these next two without any significant injuries is going to be priority number one. What is priority number two, in your opinion, maybe when it comes to develop? I don't want to just throw out the word development, or is there that those 2-3 guys that you want to see maybe come along a little bit in these next couple of games? If you get the opportunity for garbage time, what do you have your eye on, Mike?
Well, I think it's just simply consistency, right? I mean, it's like sometimes you can rush the passer, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can run the football, sometimes you can't. I thought it was intriguing, and of course, I'm always coming at this from an offensive line perspective. This offensive line was incredible last week, but a lot of it was kind of wide zone. A lot of it was edge plays. A lot of it was the ability to get outside of the Georgia defense. And then when you tried to go down the middle and run some double teams type plays and run really some inside zone, it was almost like the running backs got a little too, quick to bounce outside and really come into the teeth of that defense. I just want to see patience, and I want to see consistency. This offensive line is very good. They're very big. They're very powerful. I'd love to see Justice Haynes kind of tuck in behind them and understand that 5 yards is a good play. It doesn't always have to be a home run. Sometimes 5-yard gains are what help you sustain drives. And I think right now, when you look at Alabama's offense, it feels like it's a 20-yard gain or a 0-yard gain, right? And that's not what you want. It's not what you want moving forward. So if you're going to make a run at a national title and really kind of weave and bob your way through the SEC championship possibly and this new 12-team playoff, I think I just want to see consistency out of both sides of the line of scrimmage that allow you to kind of be methodical. Not always, count on the Ryan Williams 75-yarder. Sometimes the 5, 6, 7-yard gains right there at the line of scrimmage are what can really lead to a string of success for these offenses and defenses. I think Bama needs to show that over the next few weeks.
When we get to predictions quick, I'm going to throw mine out first. I never get to go first when it comes to these, and I always feel like the pressure's on, but I don't feel very much pressure in this one. I do feel like it's going to be like a 45-10 game, something like that. I think that, Alabama will probably throw in their second string or some, not really the guys down the stretch in this Vanderbilt game. What do you see on the scoreboard, and where do you think where does this team go as they really get into the nitty gritty and the bulk of their schedule? Because man, you look down the road and not having the East and West divisions anymore, it's not going to get any easier, even though the big dogs are behind them.
Well, I'll be flat out honest with you. I don't see this as this, kind of cakewalk kind of game. Vanderbilt's a very good team. They really are. I think they're gritty. Schematically, the things they do out of the pistol and kind of these shotgun setups, and then they'll have 2 tight ends and a wing, and they find all these different ways to, kind of bunt set and explode out of that offensively and run these option plays. I think it's going to be quite the task, especially defensively for King Womack in that group. So I think it's going to be somewhere in the 35-21 range. I think Vanderbilt will score. I don't think you can hold that team out of the end zone. I think that's kind of how I expected South Florida to look. I think this one looks a lot like that. Hopefully, Bama can find their footing before 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, like they did a few weeks ago against South Florida. But I think you will see Bama struggle at times, particularly on defense. Vanderbilt's I've been impressed when I've watched them on film. I'll just be honest with you. I've been impressed with what they're able to do. It's a team that plays hard. They have good players at certain positions. So I think Bama's going to have a tough task. I'm going to give them a 14-point victory, though. 35-21 will be what I'm expecting here this weekend.
And this is why I don't make predictions first, because then I can base what I want a little bit off of you, and so it's not like this huge drastic difference. I know fans would rather see my score.
Don't listen to me. I promise you, I don't ever know.
I can promise you know football better than I do. But you know what, though? Some of this stuff is unpredictable regardless. Nobody would have thought what we saw last weekend would have happened either. So, guys, looking forward to it. 3:15 kickoff, SEC Network on Saturday as Alabama takes its first trip on the road in the SEC to take on Vanderbilt. For Mike Johnson, I'm Simone Eli. This has been Head to Head, and we will see you next week.
Brought to you by Alabama Beef Farmers and Ranchers.